I'm here presenting this afternoon on the subject of responding to bids, tenders and proposals. And I've actually been sort of keeping count during the sessions today of how often or how infrequently I didn't see bids or tenders appear in anyone's slide deck, but I did see proposals a few times. So that was quite encouraging. There's been, the presentations today have been very broad in their scope, and that's been great. That's a great way of getting across a different topic. This session is going to be a bit of a dive into a particular area, but it's nowhere near going to be as deep a dive as I could go. I've estimated that on the training course I'm currently developing, there'll be about 2 days worth of material. So what I'm going to be doing in this one is just lightly skipping across this area, talking about bids, tenders and proposals. I do believe that organisations, suppliers, vendors, service providers should have capability and competency in responding to bids, tenders and proposals. In a slide or two, I admit how difficult this can be and how challenging a world it can be, but it's not going to go away anytime soon. And there's certainly a lot of business to be won by knowing how to work smartly when customers decide to go through formal procurement programs. And that's what we mean by bids and tenders. There's an RFP, there's an RFT been released, and you need to respond to that. Proactive and unsolicited proposals are a little bit different, but a lot of the same ground rules still apply. I'm not going to be speaking to that today. I'm going to be talking about the more conventional environment where customers will have a structured procurement program and they've released a document, and you've got, if you're lucky, 4 weeks, sometimes 3, sometimes only 2, to get your submission in. I also just got to acknowledge up front, I guess, that there are many different ways to win business, to grow business. I certainly subscribe to the idea if you can dissuade your customer from going to tender, going to market, that's a good thing. Nothing makes me happier to know that a customer just wants to buy directly for whoever I'm working for at that time. Plenty of different ways to win business, but there'll always be this need for this core competency to handle this complex world of bids and tenders. Is this going to work? Do we go to another slide yet? No? I will use the little arrow there. Why is that not going? I think we got there, yes. So a little bit about my background to begin with. So I've been working in bid management for about 15 years, and the more observant among you have probably done the sums already and thought, he doesn't look in his mid-30s. And the truth is that before I got into bid management, I had an unspecified number of decades working in everything from marketing communications and project management and service delivery management. And I was a lot of that was in IT and telecommunications, and I was working for Ericsson, the big Swedish telecom manufacturer, and I was looking for something else to go and do. Had this vague idea that I'd like to get into sales, having seen so many salespeople, stuff it up. Thought, how hard can that be? So they offered me this role of bid management, which I accepted, not really knowing what it was about, but it was a way of going from contractor to a permanent employee. And I was at that time, with the family life that, that was a good thing to go and pursue. So like so many people in bid management, I fell into it accidentally, and I haven't left it because I actually find it a very enjoyable and challenging world. My current paid role, my day job, my main gig, is with Konica Minolta. Konica Minolta used to make cameras years ago. They don't do that anymore. We make what we like to call multifunction devices, and everybody else knows as photocopiers and printers. But we sell them not individually. We sell them in sort of corporate fleets of several hundred, to large enterprise and government clients in fleets of a couple of hundred devices, 3 or 4 year terms. And there's a whole bunch of complexity around the commercials that have to be got right. And for that, you can't just rely on a sales guy, chasing through the different methodologies that they have. You need to wrap just a little bit of process around that just to make sure that you're managing commercial risk and delivery risk. Just before I joined Konica Minolta, I'd done that thing that so many people today seem to have done. I spent a few years doing my own contracting and consulting work. It's a baptism of fire. I recommend it to anybody at a certain point in your life. It was a lot of fun, but there's certainly a fair amount of time when you're just looking at the phone thinking, ring you bastard, because you just can't keep calling the same people back all the time. But the work does come in. You just got to learn to go with the flow. So my displacement activity was to write a book, as you do. I was actually thinking of other things that I could go and sell, and I'd conceived this idea of a process. I don't know if anybody here has heard of things called Prince2 and PMP, project management frameworks. Good. few nods there. There's a bit of a trend really for people having not so much processes, but having frameworks or conceptual frameworks to help you understand and orientate a particular problem space. And there was one or two in the bid management space. I didn't think they were very good. I thought I could do better. So that became what I call the Bid, Win, Deliver framework, which is a website and a business card and a logo, because I'm very busy with my day job at Konica Minolta. And in putting together that the training course, I then realised the assumed knowledge was this big. In fact, what I realised when I actually wrote down all the topics and assumed knowledge going into that, I actually had the basis for a textbook. And that's what I actually went and wrote first. And I was delighted to actually find a real publisher who wanted to publish it under their imprint. So on the back of my business card, which I'll be handing out gratuitously later on, there's a little QR code that takes you to the publisher's website where you can purchase your copy, ebook, paperback, or if you're really feeling generous, hardback. So that's enough on my background there. Just go through and hope it works this time. That's better. Sales enablement and bid management. I turned up at the my first sales enablement chapter meeting here in Sydney a couple of years ago, and sort of was almost apologetic. I'm not in sales enablement. I just heard there were some free drinks, and I kind of know a few people around, and I was a bit of networking. But Iris Chan made a fantastic observation to me. She said, "Oh yes, you're at the operational end of sales enablement," which sort of puzzled me. But I sort of went with the idea, and I kind of do see it in that sense now. If sales enablement is about those broad competencies, trainings, capabilities, processes, tools, environment that you need for effective selling, for winning new and profitable business, there's absolutely a place for competency and bid management, having a small team of bid managers who don't have to be dedicated to that role, by the way, but that's another point I'll come to later. Bid management did seem to be a part of the sales enablement world, and I noticed, I think it was on Kelly's the diamond graphic that you put up earlier, there were some little facets towards the right-hand side which spoke to the operational side, and that definitely sort of resonated with me. So I got interested in sales enablement because everything that was being talked about on the LinkedIn posts and the blogs that I was reading were the sort of challenges that I was facing in bid management around, you need to work with these sales guys, but you've almost got to be like the adult in the room with them. You've got to help them get to the point. This is what the customer wants to buy. They don't actually want to buy that. And what do you mean you don't know the name of, XYZ director or whatever at the organisation? There just seemed to be a lot of the things that sales enablement was trying to solve would make bid management from occasionally sort of like a rush repair job into actually a really sort of performing platform where we're really adding value in to propositions going forward into customers. So that's sort of the context, how I see it. It's around those mutual challenges that fascinate me. And in a couple of slides' time, I'm going to be talking through some points that you need to understand when you're pursuing bids and tenders. And certainly on the first few of those slides, you'll see a lot of themes that were stated in the presentations earlier today around sales enablement and what it is you're trying to achieve, and where sometimes we feel our sales forces aren't doing the best job that they could. I say next slide to myself. So why respond to bids and tenders? I'm sure everybody in this room has at one point in their life had to join a bid team and work to a deadline. Would that be true? Everyone's tenders time? Yes, it probably wasn't the most pleasant experience, and one that you were keen to revisit, would be my guess. And I guess there's a sort of a reason for that, and I called out some of the main ones there. It's actually a really challenging time. It's absolutely stressful. You certainly have some very challenging behaviours from a number of people up and down the organisation, regardless of rank or seniority. You'll see some quite interesting reactions to the work that has to be done, and there is hard work. There is definitely hard work to be done. It's not for the faint-hearted is one of the sayings that I'll roll out. And it's resource intensive. You're taking people away from their day job and giving them a whole bunch more work to go and do. And often that's not as well received as you'd like it to be. And it's time constrained. You've got that pressure of the deadline. Now, sometimes that can be really stimulating, and that's great. But it can be stressful, the clock's ticking down there. It's what drives that need to keep working through till 10 p.m. at least in the office. And, that's just one of the sides that goes with bidding. And one of my objectives is to try and reduce the amount of time that has to be done working in that mode. And then once you actually get submitted, the contract negotiations can be quite protracted. You can not hear from the customer for a month or two, which can be very frustrating and is all too common. And if you are shortlisted, just going through getting to the point where you're signing a contract, again, very painful, very drawn out. And then the actual win probability. There's an organisation, they're US-based, but they're represented here in Sydney, called Shipley Associates, who do a lot of high-end work around how to respond to bids and tenders, particularly focusing on executive summaries and the qualitative side of them. And that organisation does some global polling, and they've got a fairly accurate statistic that they've been quoting for a few decades now, that all things being equal, the incumbent wins 80% of the time. When going for a tender. So flip side to that is the challenger only wins 20% of the time. And that's pretty poor odds. If you're treating responding to a bid as an investment decision, because you're putting in resources, money and time and people, you want to get a return on that. And sometimes you can just look at bids and tenders and go, is that really right? And despite all those, negative sides to working with bids, there absolutely are rewards, and rewards that are essential for growing a business. Government tenders, government lives and dies by tenders. There's always a different way around the rules. Everyone's got a story about how they can get around it, but fundamentally, all levels of government will always go through a level of strategic procurement, structured programs where you need to be able to engage with them via these horrendous documents, RFTs and RFPs. And in fact, very large enterprises and corporations will have similar rules and thresholds above which they need to formally go to market. Now, of course, there's a lot of gamesmanship around how it gets played around. The incumbent will try and influence the tender, the challenger will try and influence the tender, all of that. But still, when push comes to shove, when the customer puts out that document, when they commit to making their next investment decision, they're selecting their next strategic supplier, next term of strategic supplier, they'll be going through this process. So you need to know what you're doing and how to respond, because again, it's time constrained. You need to be very smart and efficient going through that process. Another reward from this having a capability in bid management is long-term agreements. If you're in a short cycle, high volume transaction business, you don't often respond to bids or tenders like that. But if you want to get into longer term agreements, RFTs, RFPs are a very common vehicle, for going through and selecting that process. Although I was thinking about that point during some of the presentations today and some of the conversations over coffee and lunch, as we're moving to more like as a service delivery, is that actually going to be true? I can't remember, is it AWS or one of the web providers? It's like there's no commitment. It's just a month-by-month deal. So is that going to mean that perhaps the tender process does sort of recede a little from our lives if customers are just going for that cycle there? On the other hand, long-term relationships, getting onto government panels, that's going to be around for a while. So why respond to bids and tenders? There's definitely rewards, but there is a lot of effort that's required. And I guess it's just something maybe the engineer in me always wanting to sort of optimize and streamline things that I get quite passionate about streamlining and optimizing the bid process. So, going on. So it's important to understand the landscape. And that's the word I use. We've talked about processes and methodologies, and that is all good. But fundamentally, in bid land, you need to have an idea of the geography, of the topology, of what it is you need to know, and how you can set about tackling this problem of getting that tender submitted. So I've broken it out into 4 areas. Getting ready to bid. The following slides actually do a bit of a deeper dive on these points. So just having in your mindset that the idea is about getting ready to bid, getting your organisation, match fit, so to speak. Knowing how to organise your bid, when the document's released, what is it you've got to do, who do you need to involve, and then the actual hard part, developing the bid, what you need to look out for as you go through that, and then finally completing and submitting your bid as well. So those are the 4 main sort of topic points that are in my mind when I'm walking in for a bid's been released. Can I tick off all of this? It's not a sequential process. Some parts start before others are finished, but in broad terms, if you've got this mind map, it can guide you through. So getting ready to bid And again, I think these points here will resonate with a lot of the sales enablement practitioners here today. Know your customer. I mean, there is no substitute, and I know I'm preaching to the converted at this point, there's no substitute for having that in-depth customer knowledge, knowing who's who in the zoo. So your organisation, you need to have deep and broad relationships, so you've got maximum inside information, understanding for how this customer works. You've got to look at the markets they're working in and who are their competitors, what are the pressures that they are under. One of my bid managers is fantastic. She goes and downloads the company's last annual report. And then knows more about the customer in the bid team kickoff meeting than some of the account guys do as well, which sometimes doesn't turn out as well as we would like. But do your research. It's all about getting ready to bid. Know them inside out. And understand their business challenge. That's a term that I've sort of come up with, and I'm not claiming it's unique, but the whole idea around what is it that the customer's trying to achieve? Why are they going to market? What's their pain point, as it used to be said? Understand their business challenge. Why are they going to market it? What is it they need that they haven't got and that they need to procure? So make sure you've got a very clear understanding of that. Don't see this as, they want to buy product X and service Y. It's no. Really dig deeply into that need and the organisation so that you're ready, so that you've got a good set of ideas and concepts for when you're going through the tender and developing all the responses to the individual questions and which can be quite convoluted, but you've got to be able to respond. So if you're speaking from a point of knowledge, you will impress the customer. One idea that I've got is that you should try and make your proposals, your responses read like internal documents. So the customer doesn't see something as, this is an organisation trying to sell to us. They actually think, this is inside information, recommending that we go down this route. That would be a kind of nirvana, I guess, to try and achieve. And identify a solution that will work. So don't do that by H. James. Identify a solution that will work. Actually think about from the customer's business challenge, what is it you're going to offer to them? Offer something that's truly custom and speaks to their real needs. Address integration and transition, especially if you're a challenger trying to get in there. You may well have a brilliant product and some great testimonials, but until you address how customer is going to migrate from where they are today to onboarding your solution, that's always going to be thrown up by certainly by the incumbent that you're trying to knock out, and other people within the organisation will be going, look, it sounds great, but how long is it going to take to roll out? What's it going to cost? Be upfront about those points so the customer feels that you are that advisor who can be trusted. Address integration and transition, as I said, and then in your meetings, make sure somebody's writing down these decisions. I've seen many a bid go awry because everybody's left the design meeting with a different idea of what was agreed. And then when you try and piece it all together again in the last week, it's sort of going like that. So just some good hygiene sort of team meeting basics are really important. And then fundamentally, consider not bidding. Do not bid for everything. It's an investment decision. You've got a limited set of resources in any organisation, time, people, resources, budgets. If you're not going to win everything, so be selective about the opportunities where you truly believe that you've got a reasonable probability of landing new business there. Hopefully because you've been doing all that background research work beforehand and getting organised for the bid. Don't consider that you have to bid for everything, that somehow it's a numbers game and you'll win something eventually. Because actually, if that is your attitude, you actually won't win anything. Well, you win something, but it was off by sheer luck and charm. Organising your bid. So I guess those first points there, you can do all of that before the customers actually release the tender. That's all background preparation. That's what I sometimes term the pre-bid phase. But when the tender's actually released and you've got something concrete in front of you, you know what the customer is asking you to provide, when you've got to provide it by, terms and conditions, all of that. You've got those big meaty documents there. Actually, sometimes they're quite thin. So you need to have a plan. And that's got to be at the very minimum, some milestones, who's doing what, responsibility matrix, programming, time for developing and defining the solution, time for developing the responses, and time for product and quality assurance at the end. Just make sure you've got a plan. You don't have to fire up Microsoft Project and have an incredibly complex Gantt chart. You can just do it on a slide, just with some simple bars and graphics, but put some dates in there so everyone knows the picture about what it is you're trying to achieve. And get your messaging right as well. Executive summaries are still very, very powerful. Make sure you've really thought through the precise cut-through reasons why your solution will do exactly what the customer wants and more, and make sure you're talking in the language of business benefits. It takes a little bit of time to actually flesh out. It can frustrate some people because isn't it obvious? Well, no, actually, let's try and write down and work out what that messaging should be. And importantly, put someone in charge. And you can call them a bid manager if you like. They don't actually have to have that in their job title, but it is important that if you're working under tight time constrictions, that you've got a plan and that someone is accountable for the execution of that plan. So I've worked in organisations where different account managers would step in and fill the role of bid manager. Other people, project managers, sometimes are a good source because they're pretty good at coming up with a schedule and beating a drum and chasing up people for their action items. It can be a sales guy or a sales manager or someone who, who's got the experience and knows how to bring things together. But just make sure there's someone is actually thinking and staying awake at night worrying about hitting that submission date. It's incredibly important. As much as I believe in professional bid management as a core competency, and it's been a good career to me, I'm not about setting up an amalgamated trade union of bid managers. It's just a role, it's just a function, but it's an incredibly important one to go through. Engage your whole organisation. Think about the people who are actually going to be delivering what it is you're going to be selling. The operations managers. Engage people from engineering, whichever part of the organisation it is, logistics people if it's physical delivery. Make sure you're getting in as much information and thoughts and also risks around what you need to consider and actually putting forward a very credible business case to the customer. And above all else, prepare for hard work, because it is hard work. So then developing your bid. If you've done all the groundwork and then you've done your planning, you've then actually got to start putting pen to paper, he said, showing his age. Get working on things. If they're working within a plan and there's a structure, hopefully it will all come together. So it's time critical. You really do need people off creating things, not endless design meetings. Meet briefly, meet frequently. The world of Agile did not invent the stand-up meeting. When I'm running a bid, I will schedule in a 15-minute catch-up every day. You'll work out a mutual agreeable time. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's later in the day, but make sure the core people working on the bid get together and have a quick status update, a quick check-in. And if you're chairing that call, as I often do, kill the discussions. Sorry, you need to take that offline, but just make sure you're keeping that pulse there and there's that flow of information, because everybody still does have their day jobs to do as well. And you want to make sure that you're front of mind with everybody and they are actioning everything that they are responsible for. And build a business case. Actually take a hard look at how much revenue do you think we're going to get from this opportunity, and what's going to be the flow, what's going to be the sequence if it's over 2, 3, 4, 5 year agreement, or if it's a rollout for something for over 9 months. What's the cash flow going to be, what revenue's coming in, and then what are all the costs that are going to go against that. And allow for risks, allow for contingencies. And you've got to make sure, in disciplined and mature organisations, you're actually looking to make sure you're exceeding the hurdle margin target. Organisations have different levels of sophistication, but there'll be a spreadsheet somewhere where all this data can be brought in and plugged in, and then it spits out a number. And if it's a good number, you're good to go. If it's not, you've got to go through different escalations in management, and you've got to go and beat up on some people to reduce their costs, and then you've got to think of other ways that there could be additional revenue coming in. But certainly when you respond to a major tender, the organisation needs to have a view about the profitability of this deal. Because if you can predict you're going to make a loss up front, don't bet that a miracle is going to happen and somehow you're going to turn this positive just because you win. You need to make sure you're going in there arguing for profitable business. And stick to your plan. That's incredibly important. There's a saying in project management around, plans are worth nothing, but planning is worth everything. Go back to that plan. Make sure you're on track. Customers can send out clarifications which change your view. You need to make sure you're faithfully executing against the plan there, and follow all the instructions. Detail is important in this. Go through everything that the customer's asking for, respond to every question, provide every deliverable, every little piece of certification that they want. Make sure it's a complete response that you're providing. And think about risk. Two phrases I use a lot are commercial risk and delivery risk. If there's always a delicate balance between bidding and selling. I totally get that we need to sell, we need to win, we need the money coming in. But think about the things that could go wrong. That contract, shouldn't have any sort of landmines hidden in there. Make sure there's a proper legal review. People understand the indemnities that are being asked for, the obligations that are being exchanged, and delivery risk. Is this solution really going to work? Can it really be delivered in that time? Think about all of that as you're going through and developing your beautiful, compelling, and competitive response. And then make sure you finish up. Your ideal plan will have you finishing up 48 hours before submission date. So you have actually got time to check everything, every word, every number, every graphic. Read it through. Make sure there's no reference to the past customer that you cut and paste that paragraph from. It happens. We've all been there. Check everything. Make sure it's a solid case you're putting in there, and above all, be on time. That's when you can crack open the beers, and that's when you can relax a little bit, and then starts the nervous fret for, are you going to be shortlisted? So that's a very quick step through the sort of things that you need to be thinking about as you're going through. And I'm pretty sure in the earlier slides, you were thinking, of course, you need to know about the customer. Yep, you need to think about their business challenge. Hopefully some of the other pointers are in there, gave you a little bit more insight around what's needed in there. And, I'd like to see the point where, sort of bid management and sales enablement, they're sort of two sides of the same coin. So I'm here very much today talking to you guys to help you understand what in the world of bid management we worry about and how we think, sales enablement has so much to deliver to good business and good profitable business for organizations. Just in passing, a little quick bit of a commercial point. So I've talked about this. What is this bid, win, deliver framework? You can tell I did that graphic because it's not terribly imaginative. But this is this conceptual framework. And what I've done today is just run through some key points in there. It's an afternoon session. I don't want to get too heavy or anything. But it is quite a substantial piece. It's structured. It's completely mirrored on the full life cycle of a sales opportunity. It matches customers' investment cycle for how they research the need to go to market and a procurement cycle there. And it goes all the way through to to contract fulfillment, to benefits realization, and hopefully profitability target achievement. I could talk a lot more on that, but you can go to my website or follow me on LinkedIn for more details on that. And in fact, if you wanted to read more on that. This is the blatant commercial spot, sorry. So all the accumulated knowledge, experience I've put into that book there. I rather cheekily call it an MBA level textbook. No one's yet challenged me or contradicted me, so it is an MBA level textbook. And in my background, I've worked across so many different industries and verticals. I was making sure it was generic, so it could be applied to any one field there. And I certainly believe it's relevant to all sales professionals, certainly sales managers that need to make sure they understand how to organise and get themselves ready for a bid. So that's about it. I'm sort of getting the wind-up signal there. Thank you very much for your time. Look forward to chatting with everybody at the drinks.
Thank you.
And I stay here if there's questions.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
Oh, good.
You mentioned cracking open the beers when you delivered the tender. I found that the most important thing is navigating the wait.
Yeah.
You've got a tender for 4 months. You delivered it in mid-November. We read yesterday that we were successful. But a long way. We're very anxious about the time and effort that went into it, the money. I used to offer a case of champagne if they didn't ask me if I had that tender.
Yes, yeah. No, I think there is that relief of just once it's all submitted. I actually find that the day after a big submission, I'm completely lost. As soon as the pressure's off, I can't work out what to do next, despite like an overflowing inbox. Yeah, it's just a purely interim step of beers on the way, I assure you. Yeah. Oh no, not the case. No. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
philosophy is, and I've worked in business for a long time as well, there's always fun when the very first day you open your eyes on something. It's just not like you manage it.
Certainly, time management is an absolutely essential skill for everybody, particularly in bids. And people do know just when the pressure's on. I can literally just, I can block a call on Skype and just send an IM back. Sorry, submission this Arvo, and then I just get left alone.
And having it finished 48 hours before submission, wow. I don't think that has ever happened.
It hasn't. It's just an aspiration, and it's
Excellent.
my advice.
Thank you. Okay.
So if you manage 24, you're going real well.
I just have a quick question. At Konica, do you run some kind of question and answer repository? And if so, how are you managing all of that content?
We've actually got too much at the moment. We don't have a sophisticated content management platform. We would like to have one. We are very studious, religious in configuration control, documenting everything, keeping our records, file structure, and we do sort of capture keywords on tenders. A lot of our business deals are very similar in one level, so there's an awful lot of retained knowledge in our team. That is a very important topic, being able to call up, quick answers, good answers. And the problem actually that we find is that there are sales guys who have been doing the same thing for so long, they think they know the answer. And actually, no, it's changed. So we're trying to train people to come back. Even if you think you know, run it through the team and check that. But it is a hot topic, absolutely. Thank you.
One last question.
Who owns the bed? And who owns the qualification of that bed?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Who do you believe owns the bed? And who owns the qualification of it?
So who owns the bid?
Yeah. Yep, you get that.
So who is responsible? You mean who's responsible for the bid?
Well, who owns
who
it?
owns it? Okay, yeah.
Well, I think the person who's managing the bid should own the bid. Now, that's not to say, so that in my James's view of the world, and this isn't necessarily policy at Konica, that the sales guy owns the customer relationship and owns the opportunity. But in terms of the actual submission, the actual deliverables, the easily dozens of files that have got to be assembled, validated, approved, and ready for submission, the bid manager has to own all of that, because we're the guys there at 6 p.m., 10 p.m., midnight, later, actually owning that submission. So I have that argument often until I see a sales guy that can actually grasp the volume of issues and work and attention of detail. We have to own the bid response, I guess I would clarify that as. But certainly, and to be able to do that effectively, you need to be involved in all the early meetings. You did just touch on owning bid qualification. I think ultimately that's a business responsibility. Certainly we can have this bid managers, the bid team can have input. Sometimes I will call a bid, no bid meeting for different reasons if I think I need to, but I always go with what the organisation wants. Something I drill my team on is that we don't want to be seen as a roadblock. So I say that we're bid managers, not no bid managers. So even the most doubtful looking opportunity, you've got to find a way to get behind and try and make it fly. And if you can't, the organisation will direct you to kill it. So that's what I rely on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Well done.